Ba-da-dum, yada-da-da, ba-da-dum, ba-da-da-la-la-la-la-la, yibbidi-doo, ba-bi-bi-bi-di-doo, ba-ba-doo-be-ba-bi-bi-bi-dum, ba-da-da-dum. It was me. Oh, I heard me talking. Yeah, I forgot. Start stream just like that. Oh well. Anywho, do I even need to start my whole g'day everyone? Because I'm not... Well, look at this. I'm playing in this little window. Because I want to listen... I want to watch this / listen to this. Because I'm going to be watching someone else play. Stream very soon. Where is it? No, there we go. 88 minutes. So, this will be an 88-minute stream, I suppose. Anyway, in the meantime, let's just turn this down.
Skier in the French Alps who plummeted 50 feet into a hidden crevasse, and a 2,900-foot bridge in China that shook uncontrollably during a fierce windstorm, to a terrifying bear attack in Canada that left 2 hunters scrambling for cover, and a freak landslide in California that destroyed a major roadway. Here are 20 incredible moments caught on camera.
What am I doing?
The Philippines have been through a lot in the past 200 years. Back in 1898, the US literally bought the island from Spain for $20 million. Then, in World War II, the Japanese bombed the crap out of it. Mindanao, the second largest island in the Philippines, bore the brunt of the damage. Meanwhile, the entire area remained vulnerable to powerful earthquakes. Then, in 2019, Cotabato, a small landlocked province on Mindanao, was hit with a series of violent earthquakes that resulted in widespread destruction. Some workers in a high-rise building captured firsthand just how terrifying these quakes can be.
Dak lang, sunod. Tapo lang, gilid lang, gilid lang. Hoy, di daw magpanik. Relax, di magpanik.
The 6.8 magnitude earthquake rocks the entire office. Light fixtures swing from the ceiling, and the window shades flap like they're haunted. Workers run and scream as they head for the fire escape, as everyone's first reaction is, get the heck out of here. Our brave cameraman stays behind to document the experience, while his coworker pops up and down from under her desk. Thankfully, everyone in the office building survived the ordeal. Hopefully, they got the next few days off to recover.
That looked bloody terrifying. Although, I like to imagine it was the cameraman that was going, relax, relax, you know, don't panic, relax. Because, as you know, cameramen never die in these things. Also, you know, along with the, squeaks of all that, notice how, almost all the panic screams and all that are coming from the women. I'm not being sexist, I'm just pointing out an observation. Never understood that. Why would you scream when the screaming doesn't really change the outcome, of what's happening? It's just making it more scary. Like, I don't know what's scarier, hearing, the thing actually happening, or all the amounts of screaming that's happening as well. Because I'll be honest, what makes something like this worse is when it's just screaming everywhere.
Cover.
You're not helping the situation by screaming. Stop screaming.
Les Deux Alpes is a popular ski resort in the French Alps. The resort village sits about 5,400 feet above sea level, with the tallest lifts stretching to nearly 12,000 feet. It features some of the largest skiable glaciers in Europe, but don't get too excited. Glacier skiing takes years of practice and can be extremely dangerous. In April of 2022, a pro skier with over 10 years of experience got duped by soft snow. He thought he was about to glide through powder. Instead, he fell into an endless crevasse.
Found the hole. Ooh, that's... Ugh.
Miraculously, his skis caught on a ledge after falling nearly 50 feet. He's lucky the rest of his team was only 20 minutes away. Then again, it was the longest 20 minutes of his life. His team had already done several runs down the glacier before he fell. He thought he was avoiding the hole. Instead, he skied clean into it. According to National Geographic, these things are often over 100 feet deep. Those who fall in rarely make it out. Thankfully, he didn't get hurt during the fall and even went back up the mountain when they pulled him out.
Yeah, imagine that. Avoid the hole. Minutes later, echoing just out of reach, out of his eyesight. Found the hole.
The country of Indonesia is one that is filled with a staggering number of volcanoes. Here, they are all located along the Pacific Ring of Fire and threaten the lives of roughly 5 million people living in the region. Of the 147 volcanoes located in the country, the most active of them all is Mount Merapi. Back on May 11th of 2018, a group of Indonesian climbers decided to take a hike up this mountain. While cooking breakfast one morning at their campsite, the group heard a rumbling noise off in the distance. When they turned to see what it was, they were shocked to find that Mount Merapi had awoken as well, and was now erupting only a few hundred feet away.
Ano mulate mas?
Wah, gizi tok ki.
Dari masih kalau mangan ora iki. Erupsi, ya Allah.
Waduh. Astagfirullahaladzim.
Now, that's not something you want to see.
Astagfirullahaladzim. Berlindung.
It's all that.
Berlindung.
I'll just go. Well, shit.
Astagfirullahaladzim. Berlindung. Astagfirullahaladzim. Backing. Persis di depan mata saya. Merapi erupsi. Gemeteran kaki, gemeteran. Astagfirullahaladzim. Erupsi Merapi.
These guys sure know how to respond to something like this. Just somewhat calm. As panicking gets you nowhere.
The man filming the video, Chopin Pengetsu, later told reporters that everybody was caught by surprise. In the video, he can be heard telling climbers further up to take cover, and it wasn't long before everybody stopped what they were doing and began heading to safety. According to the government, it is estimated that ash from the eruption rose to a height of roughly 5,500 meters, or just over 18,000 feet. Miraculously, those in this video were able to escape without injury of any kind.
Yeah, that's a...
The Humen Bridge is a 2,900-foot suspension bridge in Guangdong Province, China. It stretches over the Pearl River, connecting the Nansha district of Guangzhou to the town of Dongguan. About 80,000 cars drive across the Humen each day, but on May 5th of 2020, commuters had to find another way over the Pearl. It was around 3 p.m. local time. The bridge was packed with cars when a violent windstorm appeared out of nowhere. 38-mile-per-hour winds slammed into the bridge, causing it to wobble and wave like a roller coaster. They closed the bridge before anything happened, but someone on the ground still managed to record the nightmare scenario. According to Chinese experts, the waving didn't cause any damage to the bridge. Once the storm calmed down, they reopened it for travel. Drivers on the bridge described it as terrifying. Others said the waves made them carsick. It felt like they were on a roller coaster. Just imagine being trapped between all those cars. Your mind can only focus on the worst case scenario. Suspension bridges like this are meant to be streamlined, meaning they present as little wind resistance as possible. When engineers added a 4-foot retaining wall, they basically built a wind-capturing sail. The wall was torn down to avoid a repeat event. Any bear expert will tell you the same simple rule. If it's black, fight back. If it's brown, lie down. That's because black bears and brown bears, aka grizzly bears, behave differently. On July 6th of 2018, hunters Caleb and Shannon ventured into the woods outside.
Well, hear me out. If it's a bear, you're fucked unless you got a big enough gun. When I say big enough gun, it's because if you don't have a big enough gun, the bullets might just graze it.
Of Saskatoon, Canada. They took a boat downriver and set up a bait trap in a clearing. The idea was to lure some animals out of the woods. Instead, a mama bear showed up with her cubs. This is known as the worst bear situation you can be in, especially when mama bear can smell you.
Ew, yeah.
We scared Mom. I said you only live once.
These guys were about to learn the hard way that mama bear will do anything to protect her cubs. Thankfully, they lived to tell the tale. Even though Caleb and Shannon did everything you're not supposed to do, the bear backed off. Shannon only suffered a minor injury when he fell and sliced his finger. Brown bears attack because they feel threatened. That's why you're supposed to play dead. If you fight back, they'll continue to perceive you as a threat. The major difference is whether the bear is attacking you or not. Even if a bear bluff charges, it's not an attack. That's when you make yourself look big or back away slowly. It's only an attack when the bear makes contact. That's when you play dead if it's a brown bear. Black bears are different. If they attack you, fight back with everything you have. On March 25th of 2014, a $50 million luxury apartment complex in Houston, Texas suddenly went up in flames. The building was still under construction, and all the workers escaped through the bottom floor. All but one. 56-year-old Curtis Reese knew he was in serious danger. He was stuck on the top floor with no way of climbing down. The path behind him was blocked by fire, so all he could do was crawl onto the balcony and pray someone saw him. The fire department noticed the stranded worker, thus starting a race against the clock.
Yeah, he was inside there. Do they freaking see him?
Unbelievable.
Oh my God.
Hurry up.
Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. Oh my God. Oh
Could have
no,
been
oh
safe
no,
right there.
oh no. Oh, oh my God.
Now you're more safe.
Keep going. Keep going.
Oh,
Look at the glass melting up there. On the window melting.
they need to get him. Oh
Just
Jesus.
stay there.
Oh God. Oh God.
Look, you got the ladder there. He's safe.
Hell, he can jump from there. I mean, good grief.
I'd be jumping, man.
No, you don't want to
They need
jump.
to move that truck up. Oh my God.
I don't know why they're not evacuating.
I think that we probably should be going.
It's time to evacuate the guys.
Jump for it, man.
Hell yes. Oh, thank Jesus. Thank you, God.
Curtis made it safely onto the ladder, but they weren't out of the woods yet.
Oh my God. Oh no, my God.
Huh.
Oh.
All right, so he wouldn't have been safe there. What kind of wall was
Curtis
that?
escaped with minor burns on his face and hands. Later on, he said he decided to swing down from the 5th to the 4th floor once the flames got too close. It was a daring move, but waiting around wasn't a valid option. The fire chief said the fire likely started after a welding accident on the roof. When they arrived, they saw the welders trying to extinguish a small blaze. Then the wind picked up and spread the fire across the building. Locals in the farming village of Kuchpura, India, witnessed something phenomenal. On July 14th of 2021, a giant landmass suddenly arose from a murky river. The locals thought they were witnessing a sign from the gods. Instead, it was Mother Nature rejecting their bad farming practices.
Well, I mean, that is also a sort of sign of the god. Well, that's not good. Let it explode. This is rising.
You
That was fast.
उसके दिया जमीन की सकता जा रहे विक्की ऊपर बग जा ऊपर बैठ कर चला गए
मेरे भाई ये तो लियारी भाग का देखियो बैठना के रह के बैठना के उठा रे अरे बैठना रे देखे उठ गया और भी
एला
Still rising.
देखो मेरे भाई देख
पानी पड़ेगा भाई नीचे से
कमाल है देख धरती पटल है देख कमाल है देख कितना पटल भाई अपने आप ही जमीन उठना रही पता नहीं भोलेनाथ ने क्या कर दिया
जमीन ही
ये तो भोले पर जान दे दो नहीं उठावेगा
ओए आग लग देख आग लग
the
देख
ground
सकते हो भाई
rising. It's a very interesting sight.
इसकी जीरी बच जाएगी बाकी तो रह जाएंगे डोल तुम्हारे ऊपर ऊपर
It looked more like a secret military base rising out of the water. At points, the landmass stood 10 feet tall. But what was it? According to reports,
Ground.
this wasn't some rare geological event. Instead, it was the result of bad farming. To improve his yield, the landowner dug a 10-foot hole and filled it with rice husk ashes and sand. Then, he sowed more rice on top. Then, on July 13th, heavy rain sunk deep into the soil and penetrated the buried material. The pressure caused the land to rise like a balloon.
Rising like a... No, bread. Rise like bread. It rose like bread. That's what it was like. This
According to
is like
reports,
bread.
this
Brown bread.
Chiang Mai, Thailand is the second largest city in the country. About 1.2 million people live in the mountainous region, also known as the Thai Highlands. In December of 2020, they got to host the Miss Thailand Beauty Pageant. The pageant got off to a rocky start due to COVID-19. They normally hold it in Bangkok, but the dense population and risk of infection was too high. So they chose the less populated Chiang Mai and a cute little cafe overlooking a not-so-cute pond. At one point, the girls gathered on a rope bridge for pictures. Maybe someone should have checked the weight limit.
Oh, great. 2, 1.
Of the 30 contestants, only 3 suffered a few cuts and bruises when the bridge collapsed. The cafe's owner was so embarrassed that he offered to cover everyone's hospital bill and pay to have their clothes cleaned. He donated 500,000 Thai baht, or about $14,000. In Thailand, beauty pageants have boomed in popularity. There are regional and national events that can help young girls break into the modeling and fashion industry. They can win hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash prizes and earn lucrative sponsorships. They just have to avoid falling into gross pond water.
I don't know, it gave them good publicity.
Canyon Country is a small neighborhood in Santa Clarita, California. Of the city's 4 neighborhoods, Canyon Country is the most populated. So, when a landslide on November 20th of 2015 buckled a 2-mile stretch of road, the locals had to find a different way into town. It was around 10:30 a.m. Public works officials were driving down Vasquez Canyon Road when they noticed it was all torn up. The mountain was moving, and a landslide had wiggled under the road and buckled the pavement. It literally looked like a smaller mountain was growing underneath. Paul Funk, who works with the LA County of Public Works, said the road was closed indefinitely. Fixing it would take a long time. That's unfortunate because Vasquez Canyon connects 2 major roads leading in and out of Santa Clarita. They said more than half the road was raised about 15 feet in the air. Clearly, landslides and roads don't get along. Check out what happened to this highway in Arunachal Pradesh, India, when the mountain gave out underneath.
And there goes all that. Think at a point they'd just go with...
Due to heavy rain,
French.
India is highly prone to freak landslides. The summer of 2021 was a particularly rainy monsoon season. Several other landslides occurred in the area, one of which took out a bridge. Thankfully, though, nobody was injured. With more and more rain falling around the world, I'm sure we'll see many more videos like this in the future. People love blowing stuff up. Those who want a little extra and legal boom can head down to their local outdoor store and grab some tannerite. It's a mix of ingredients patented by its creator, Daniel Tanner. All you have to do is mix, shake, and shoot. The best part? It's legal in almost every state. On March 16th of 2014, a tannerite enthusiast decided this old, dilapidated barn was ready to be demolished. So, he loaded 164 pounds of explosives into a plastic storage container and took a few steps back. All he needed was a well-placed shot to blow the barn sky high.
All right, so we cleared out all the metal railing, the cattle fencing from here, and that was out behind the back of the barn. It's back there laying on the ground, just flat back behind the hill. But we tried to clear out all the metal. That'll be the last piece we take out. With the tannerite up on the target. £164.
Boom.
As you can see, tannerite can pack a serious punch. Even so, the ATF doesn't regulate its sale. That's because the individual components aren't explosive. One could easily buy them off the shelf and make their own. You still need a high-velocity projectile to finish the job. Otherwise, tannerite is safe in its static state. Our tannerite enthusiast, we'll call him Nixon, is clearly a showman. He was kind enough to include a slow-motion replay of the barn explosion. He also included some aftermath footage of what remains of the barn.
Oh no! Was that about what you thought would happen? That is 164 pounds of tannerite.
Nixon was pretty blunt about why he blew up the barn. In his own words, because I can. Overall, I'd say his mission was a success. In March of 2017, locals in southeastern Manitoba, Canada began seeing this odd-looking orange helicopter flying all over the sky. It was an Erickson air crane, and its job was to install 334 new electrical towers as part of a public works project. As you're about to see, it takes extreme precision to fly one of these things. Those are some of the craziest pilot skills we've ever seen. As they say, practice makes perfect. Apparently, our pilot can do this all day. In fact, they can set up nearly 20 towers per day by helicopter, but only 4 towers with normal cranes. Using helicopters also reduces their construction footprint. They don't have tons of heavy vehicles driving all over the fertile farmland. Afula is a small city of about 60,000 people in northern Israel. It's often called the capital of the valley due to its strategic location in the Jezreel Valley. On June 25th of 2014, a seasoned pilot and a student took a Cessna 152 out for a few training exercises. Emergency landings weren't on the day's schedule. Our flight student was about to learn why you can't panic under pressure.
מנוע מגמגם עומד לכבות, אני באזור עפולה, מבצע נחיתת אונס בשטח. נחיתת אונס בשטח, האם אתה תצליח לנחות? חיובי. עוד אתה צריך שנשלח לך איזושהי עזרה? אני הולך לנחות באזור המזרחי של עפולה. קיבלתי באזור המזרחי של עפולה. אם אתה צריך... כן, אחי. בשדה? כן. תחזיק את עצמך, תגן על הראש. משתף בעצים.
According to an incident report, the plane suffered a total power failure mid-flight. Thanks to his years of experience, our pilot easily pulled off an emergency landing. It was either that or nosedive into a field. Thankfully, our pilot had a nice open area to land in. He used the trees and wings to stop the plane, and everyone walked away unharmed. Nobody likes getting caught in a storm. If you've ever found yourself outside without an umbrella, then you definitely know what we mean. For these people in Queensland, Australia, though, a little rain would definitely have been better than the violent hailstorm they got caught in. It doesn't seem that bad at first, but trust me, just wait.
Oh, the caravan's gonna get wrecked. Oh no. Don't move, guys.
LA.
We would keep playing the footage, but the storm never really lets up by the end of it. By the video's climax, hailstones cover the family's yard and street. After several terrifying minutes, the violence subsides and the hail turns into the rain they hoped for. The November 2019 hailstorm was so bad that the Australian Insurance Council declared it a catastrophe that caused $40 million in damage. Over 5,000 claims flooded into the office, mostly for damaged vehicles. One car lot filed claims on 200 cars, and a farmer reported $200,000 worth of damage. It's a miracle that nobody got hurt in the storm, because I don't think even an umbrella would have helped all that much. Lions Bay is a small community about 40 minutes north of Vancouver, Canada. It's among the smallest communities in British Columbia, but it's home to one of the most dangerous kayaking runs on Earth. On August 21st of 2018, Adrian Matern and his two friends stumbled upon an old drainage ditch in the mountains. All three are experienced whitewater kayakers sponsored by Red Bull. So, instead of seeing it as dangerous, they recognized it as fun. With GoPros strapped to their helmets, all three took off on a 50-mile-per-hour race to the ocean below.
Good? I'm good. Who's going first? I'm going first. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, shit! Wow! Oh shit! Woo!
Things looked pretty grim when their kayaks began spinning around. Thankfully, they regained control and landed safely in the ocean. According to his Red Bull profile, Adrian loves mastering extreme mental and physical challenges in his kayak. He's always looking for new spots to push his skills. In his own words, he likes thinking outside the box. Others don't share his enthusiasm. Peter de Jong, the chief administrative officer of Lions Bay, says anyone kayaking down the storm drain is trespassing on private property. Lions Bay does not condone the activity in any way.
Oh no shit. One little accident and, oh, there we go. We got a lawsuit on our hands.
Forest fires are among the most dangerous issues facing our planet. Australian brush fires are pretty bad all year round, and we all know how much damage fires cause in California every summer. Aerial firefighters constantly train to fight these blazes as best they can. Now, you've probably seen footage of planes and helicopters dropping tons of water and flame-retardant material on the forest. But watching them train, specifically how precise they are, is pretty awesome to say the least. The plane takes off from the runway, and the pilot circles back to line up his shot. He keeps his hand ready to drop his payload as he aligns the plane with the car on the ground. The plane dips a few hundred feet before dropping 9,000 pounds of fire-retardant goop on top of the vehicle. The weight rips the car to shreds, and a camera on the inside gives us a great shot of the thick pink substance. Some aerial firefighting planes can drop 170,000 pounds of material on a wildfire. The payloads can cover more land as they get bigger, with smaller planes covering between 300 and 1,800 feet, and bigger planes stretching their pink goo for over a mile. Ejector seats save lives. Without them, countless pilots, including Neil Armstrong, would have gone down with their planes. On May 6th of 1968, Armstrong was test flying an LLRV, also known as a Lunar Landing Research Vehicle. He had been up in the RV 20 times before. He knew it like the back of his hand. However, mechanical issues can get the best of anybody, even Neil Armstrong. At first, everything looks fine. Neil brings the RV in for a landing, but then he suddenly takes off again. A mechanical failure caused Armstrong to lose control, and the RV veered off on its own. Knowing he couldn't stop it, Neil pressed the ejector button and launched from the seat. He landed safely while the RV crashed into Ellington Air Force Base. Instead of calling it quits for the day, he brushed the dust off and went back to his desk. Fast forward 41 years to 2009, when planes got sleeker and much faster. It was May 15th in Kandahar, Afghanistan. Lieutenant Martin Pert of the Royal Air Force was due to land his Harrier GR-9 at the base. Unfortunately, it didn't go as expected. Another pilot landed before Martin. Then, a hostile missile alert forced him to come in short. He tried to pull up to slow the plane, but the tail struck the runway. Thanks to Martin's ejector seat, he lived to tell the story. The Iran hostage crisis was a pivotal moment in U.S.-Iran relations. On November 4th of 1979, a militarized group of Iranian college students took over the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. They took 52 American diplomats hostage for 444 days until they were finally released on January 20th of 1981. During those 444 days, the U.S. government tried everything in its playbook to rescue the hostages and negotiate a safe release. Through a joint venture between the Air Force, Navy, and Lockheed Georgia, Operation Credible Sport was launched. The plan was to rig a Lockheed C-130 Hercules with rocket engines, allowing for quick takeoff and landing. Ideally, it'd be able to land and take off from a soccer field in Tehran instead of needing a massive runway. First, they conducted individual tests on each crucial component: takeoff, flight, and landing. Those tests went well, so they moved to full-scale tests on October 29th. The takeoff rockets worked flawlessly. It's the landing that gave them trouble. Basically, the reverse thrusters cut all forward momentum, and the plane fell to the runway. The crash caused one of the wings to break, but thankfully, everyone was okay. The Credible Sport project was terminated on November 2nd, when the Iranian government accepted a plan to release the hostages. Still, seeing these massive planes using rockets to take off and land is a sight to behold, and a piece of American history we may never see again. The scenic roads around Notodden, Norway are a great place for a casual drive. On January 12th of 2015, a local man decided to take his Mercedes out for a spin. Unfortunately, he had a little engine trouble partway through. He pulled over at the top of the hill when he saw smoke rising from the engine. He engaged the parking brake and quickly called the fire department. They arrived and began spraying the car with water. All seemed fine until the parking brake melted.
There it goes.
I helvete. Hva får jeg nødt til å gjøre da? Så ferdig der da.
They're lucky the guardrail held up, or that car would have landed in someone's backyard. Once the parking brake failed, the pressure from the fire hoses was enough to roll the car. When gravity entered the fray, there was nothing our firefighters could do. Thankfully, the fire didn't spread. The fire trucks backed down the road and finished the job. We're not sure if our cameraman is the owner or if he was just standing by. Kangaroo Island is a 1,700 square mile island off the coast of southern Australia. It's usually a peaceful place where kangaroos, koalas, and penguins enjoy a secluded life away from the mainland. But that all changed during the 2019 and 2020 brush fire season. Several fires ripped across the island, burning a quarter of it away by January
until
4th.
the Fire
Firefighters
Nation
arrived
attacked.
as the blaze torched trees and surrounding grasslands. There was nothing they could do but watch when the fire got so hot that it spun into a dangerous fire tornado.
I mean, I was sort of right. Fire Nation did attack. Oh, jeez. That's a... well. I mean, you gotta admit, that looks so cool.
The men are forced to take cover in their trucks as the fire-nado heads straight toward them. We can't imagine how hot those spinning winds must be. And that's on top of the average weather in southern Australia. The fire-nado grows more intense every second as our firefighters remain a safe distance away.
They can't do the people on the back there. Alright. Here it comes again.
The tornado eventually dies down, leaving a charred path of destruction in its wake. Several kangaroos hop away from the fire, hopefully making it somewhere far away. Sadly, the fires devastated wildlife across Kangaroo Island. About 48,000 koalas were living on the island before December of 2019. By the time they put the fire out, only 8,500 were left. Back in December of 2021, Typhoon Rai wreaked havoc across the Philippines. The Category 5 super typhoon was the second costliest in Philippine history, dealing $1.02 billion in damages and forcing President Rodrigo Duterte to declare a state of calamity. Desperate times fell upon the Filipino people, especially those whose fishing boats were lost to Rai's powerful winds. Locals gathered along the waterway in Bayawan City to inspect what remained of their fleets. They noticed they were missing a lot of boats. Then, they noticed their worst nightmare floating down the river.
That moment, you can't help but go, shit. Now what?
A floating barge of tangled fishing boats and debris comes floating down the waterway, crashing into everything still docked. All our local fishermen can do is watch and hope their boats don't suffer any more damage than they already have. Our crew runs after the barge to keep reporting. We imagine at least several dozen fishing boats are fused in that monstrosity. Now, cost aside, Rai was one of the most powerful storms to ever make land in the Philippines. It intensified to a Category 5 storm as it neared the islands, with winds gusting well over 100 miles per hour. According to NPR, Rai stretched 600 miles across when it made landfall. By the time it left, it had displaced almost 500,000 people and claimed hundreds of lives. While these people's boats definitely were either severely damaged or destroyed, at least they survived the storm with their lives. If you enjoyed this video and want to see another one just like it, then be sure to click the link on screen now. As always, thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in next time.
Oh goodness, I spent so long looking around, then I ran out of video to watch.
In this video, we combine some of the most terrifying caving disasters we've covered on this channel. If you enjoy these stories, make sure to leave a subscription for more exciting cave diving documentaries like these. One day, nearly 30 years ago, an outdoorsman decided to try real caving in Tennessee's deepest underground pothole, Bull Cave. He found himself severely unprepared for the dangers of the underground waterfall within. On the way out, he had to battle for his own life as rescuers bravely fought to save him. This is the story of the Bull Cave Rescue, the Curious Caver. In the early summer of 1990, a 23-year-old man named John departed on a trip into Bull Cave. He was new to splunking and he was already hooked. John was supposedly an outdoorsman who hiked along the woodland trails of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. His travels took him to show caves, heavily modified caves equipped with lights and other amenities for staff-guided tours. The kinds of caves families visit on RV trips across the USA. Usually only beautiful caves or short caves with wide open passages are chosen to become show caves. These caves need great attractions, like the 3,121 square feet of over 200 million cave pearls in Gruta de las Canicas, the flowstone cascades of Lechuguilla, or the gypsum flower petals of Double Bopper Cave. Incredible rock formations like these inspired John to visit more caves. But they didn't have the same thrill, the same sense of adventure, discovery, and freedom that a hike in the woods can bring. He didn't want to tour caves. He wanted to explore them, conquer them. So he decided to explore one of Tennessee's most impressive caves firsthand, without all the walkways, souvenir shops, and crowds of people. He began researching caves in the area, trying to find something that would be as awe-inspiring as the show caves he visited. He found that Tennessee has hundreds of caves, and many are spread throughout a single line. And along that line, he found the longest and deepest cave in the state. The grueling distance of Tennessee's longest cave system, the Cumberland Caverns, sprawls out across 32 miles. This cave may have been on John's list, but roughly 30 years prior, landowners stole the most impressive portions of the cave from the general splunking community and transformed much of it into another commercial cave. That's when he discovered Bull Cave. Bull Cave, sometimes called Bull's Cave, is one of many caves littered throughout Cades Cove in Tennessee. Cades Cove is a huge valley between sections of the impressive Great Smoky Mountains. In the past, the valley was a trail used by Cherokee natives, and later by John Oliver and Lorena Frazier following America's War of 1812 against the United Kingdom. Cades Cove was once covered by loose collections of silt, clay, and sandstone until massive glaciers and vast flowing waters eroded these lighter rocks down to the limestone beneath. These limestone layers are roughly 700 million years old, which gave the rock plenty of time to accumulate cave networks deep underground. This glacial runoff created hundreds of caves in and near the valley, like the famous Gregory's Cave. Gregory's might be the most popular cave in Tennessee, but Bull Cave gives it a run for its money. Bull Cave is the deepest pit in both Cades Cove and the whole state of Tennessee. Its maximum explored depth stretches down 924 feet into the cold, dark crust of the earth. Even though it's mostly a vertical cave full of dangerous climbing portions, Bull Cave is also fairly long, with 2.3 miles of dark, cramped caverns. John probably didn't love the idea of sleeping overnight in an underground passage, but he thought he could definitely handle a climb. The mountains around the area gave him plenty of opportunity to get climbing experience. He wouldn't be going to the Olympics anytime soon, but he was strong and he could hold his own through the cave's vertical shafts. On the day of his excursion, he probably gathered the usual outdoor gear: a drawstring athletics bag, a plastic water bottle, some toilet paper, trail mix, some brand new hiking shoes, and some chalk. He met up with an experienced caver who would guide him during their journey. The cave guide thought John was physically fit and capable of handling the challenge of Bull Cave. He thought the upper climbing portion was easy enough to traverse both up and down, so if they ever reached a sticking point that John couldn't overcome, he could easily just climb back up. The two trekked through the Tennessee wilderness and ducked under the rocky opening of Bull Cave. The pair connected their harnesses to anchors and metal clips in the rocky walls near Bull Cave's first drop. At the cliff, their headlamps glinted off water gently spraying from a hole several feet below them near the opposite side of the cylindrical drop. The water looked tame as it misted on the rocks below. They gazed down at the dark hole extending into the empty void beyond their sight and started to climb. Their descent was slow and methodical. John was experiencing difficulty, but he was making progress. They reached the first pitch and continued downward. As they climbed down, the water started getting heavier. John kept pushing himself harder, and they reached hundreds of feet down into the cave. But as they kept going, John was getting more uncomfortable. He wasn't expecting to get drenched, so they started to climb back up Bull Cave, rescue below the Bull Cave waterfall. John's laundry list was all misguided, but one of his biggest mistakes might sound strange. He should have brought different shoes, and his mistake became clearer as the waterfall got heavier. Most new footwear needs time to break in. Most world-class climbers will use separate shoes for different types of rock, different types of holds, and other conditions. Almost all climbing shoes have little to no treads to create maximum surface tension with rock. Many of these shoes are also lightweight and thin-soled to help climbers feel the rock during risky technical maneuvers. That's why underwater shoes are light and flexible. Regular shoes are big and bulky, creating more surface area, which causes higher resistance underwater. John was definitely experiencing these issues. His shoes were designed for dirt and mud, not slippery limestone. Each movement took extra effort. He couldn't rely on his footing to keep him stable, so he used his arms to force himself up the rope and over each foothold. To make matters worse, his thick, insulating hiking shoes collected water, adding to their weight. Now, the additional weight won't bother people who step in rivers on hikes, but waterlogged shoes quickly become heavy during repeated movements when climbing. Even good footholds against nice, flat rock wedged into the side of the cliff became unstable as water continued pouring from above, getting stronger and faster. His athletic gear was designed to cool off when wet. That way, if it was a hot day outside, his sweat could absorb into the fabric and keep him going. It also provided good ventilation, which is a must-have for sweaty hikes. But deep below Earth's surface, his choices were coming back to bite him. The same breathable fabric provided no resistance to the water flowing over the top of him. The outside water was cooling the fabric down faster than his body could warm it up, trapping him in a tight polyester casket as he tried to climb. So many unknowing first-timers treat caves like hikes. Most of the time, well-traversed or beginner caves can be tackled without the aid of extra gear. But if the going ever gets tough, you'll wish you invested in better gear. You might get weird looks by casuals hiking through easy caves, but if disaster strikes, you'll be ready. Assuming tame caves will remain tame is a costly mistake. Thousands of lives have been lost just in recent history to exposure, cave-ins, or other mistakes that could have been prevented with the right equipment. Unfortunately, John didn't have the luxury of regret. In this moment, his fight for survival had begun. His muscles tensed as he shivered, which made each movement even harder. He had to burn energy just to stretch his muscles out to make the next movement. The stiffness in his fingers turned to rigidity as his hands betrayed him, no longer responding to his commands to grip the rope and rock. Nearly halfway up the final shaft, he hung there in place, still tethered to the rope, but unable to safely descend down to the next ledge. John's guide had to think fast. The same waters that were turning John into a human icicle were threatening to overtake him as well. He was even less prepared than John, because he was hardened by a life of splunking in dangerous corridors. The guide glanced up at the ridge above and thought of the safety, warmth, and rest it would bring. He looked down at the inexperienced caver, barely still sitting in his harness to retain tension and his position along the cave wall. If John went down, it could be disastrous for him as well. The sudden weight on the ropes could dislodge an anchor, leading into a cascade of terrible snaps and breaks, sending them both into free fall. The icy rock below would shatter them and leave them blasted by the spray of the Bull Cave waterfall. They would both surely die on impact or die in the cold long before rescuers could arrive. Even if they bounced or rolled off the cliff with only minor injuries, the water below would not save them. It was a shallow, fast-moving stream only a few feet deep, cradled by smooth limestone that slid and twisted into further passages that descended deeper into the depth. The experienced caver sat back in his harness and looked down at the rock, taking stock of the footholds and handholds. He developed a mental map of the route down to John, leaned back in his harness, and took a step back down the cliffside. After a few shaky movements, the expert closed his eyes and held his breath momentarily as water gushed over his face. He performed the next few movements with limited visibility, sometimes being forced to close his eyes while he was reaching for the next rock. The guide reached John and held on to him as they both went down to the ledge below. The guide took off some of his own gear to help John stay warm, and instructed him to keep making noise and respond when called to. The roar of the waters would make it hard to hear each other, but the guide needed to make sure John was still conscious. The guide sprinted out of Bull Cave and contacted rescue teams. He quickly went back down to the ledge and kept eyes on John, asking him to report his condition every few minutes. As the clock ticked down, the guide kept turning around to check for rescuers. Eventually, he called down to John one more time, but this time, there was no response. The guide prepped himself to go down through the waters once more and start CPR. Just as he was leaning into his harness, he looked up over the cliff edge and saw lights. The rescue team had arrived. The guide got back up as the teams began their preparations, but he kept looking down for any signs from John. More rescuers were storming out of their vehicles toward the shirtless cave guide leaning dangerously over the cliff edge underground. They asked him for the location and status of the stranded caver, but he didn't hear them. He was listening and watching down intently. As the rescuers reached out to get the experienced caver's attention, John lifted an arm in acknowledgement of the call. He was still alive. The relief jolted the guide back to reality, and he gave them the info they needed. Over 10 rescuers got to work on the operation. They lowered a water-resistant handheld radio down to John to communicate with him while they worked. They asked him questions on set intervals to monitor his condition until the team could reach him. He could only groan. But even if he couldn't reply, the sound of helpful voices might give him the strength to hang on. Rescuers knelt down to hammer more anchors into the rock so that multiple people could descend at once. One by one, a few of the rescuers, trained in emergency medicine, slowly climbed down the wet cliffside to reach John and provide any first aid that they could, while other teams began the rest of the work. The crew on top of the cliff affixed wheels to heavy anchors drilled into the ceiling of Bull Cave. This sheave was connected to 2 flanges as a strong, brightly colored rope was looped around the wheel.
What does a monster look like to you? What figures slither and claw their way into your nightmares, chasing you down endless halls and stalking you through the dark until you wake up screaming? Maybe you imagine something tall and lean, bony arms reaching for you from atop impossibly long, slender legs, its featureless face showing no mercy. Maybe you think of a man in a striped sweater with knives for fingers, or a serial killer in a hockey mask wielding a machete. Maybe it's something more inhuman, a cosmic horror of tentacles and eyes that can see into your very soul. You probably don't think of something with no arms, no legs, no body at all, just a face. What's so scary about that? A face can't run after you, can't grab you by the ankles and pull you under the bed. A face can only look. It may be unsettling to behold. It might send a chill down your spine, but the worst it can do is make you a little uncomfortable. And if you can't stand it any longer, you could always just close your eyes or walk away and be done with it, right? If that's what you think, if you don't believe in monsters that can hurt you without lifting a finger, then you're the type to fall victim to a very special, very intelligent mask. In the hollowed halls of the SCP Foundation, there is a containment cell outfitted with a hermetically sealed glass case. surrounded by steel, iron, and lead. There are guards posted outside, along with a trained psychologist. If you are ever brave and foolish enough to enter that room, you'll see a simple white porcelain comedy mask with a peculiar black substance leaking from its eyes and mouth. Whatever this slime touches, surfaces begin to corrode, to rot away into puddles of black liquid. You might notice the same liquid trickling slowly down the walls of the room, corrupting everything in its path. As unsettling of a sight as it is, if you approach the mask to take a closer look, you will find yourself overcome by an intense, nearly irresistible urge to pick it up and put it on, to wear it, to let it consume you from the inside out and puppet your body while your brain simply turns off. Like an extinguished flame, you'll simply be gone. Then, who knows what the mask will do? It won't be your concern anymore, that's for sure. But thankfully, you haven't gone into the room with the porcelain mask. You haven't let it cast its spell on you. Not yet, at least. It's waiting for you there, in the room with black slime oozing down its walls, and it will wait patiently for as long as it needs to. After all, what's a mask without a face to wear it? SCP-035, better known as the Possessive Mask, sat in its containment cell, immobile as always. It didn't really have much of a choice in the matter. The Foundation had chosen, selfishly, to revoke its host privileges. Once upon a time, they offered it bodies to choose from. Mannequins, dummies, and wooden dolls it could adorn and pilot. They didn't last as long as an organic living host, of course, but it was something. It was a taste of freedom. This dreadful new situation was almost enough to make the mask want to change its surroundings. This dreadful new situation was almost enough to make the mask want to change its expression from comedy to tragedy, but it was determined to still find something to laugh about. Even without a body trapped in this infernal box, there had been some delicious opportunities for entertainment. Human minds were fragile things. The mask had learned this over the infinite years of its life, if one could call it a life. Apply the right kind of pressure to the right weak points, whisper an enticing word or two, find the right emotional wound to sprinkle a pinch of salt into, and humans would buckle completely in almost no time at all. It had tried all sorts of methods since being confined to this boring little box. Sometimes it would charm someone, pour honeyed flattery into their heads until the person felt like the mask was a dear friend, a confidant. Once suitable trust had been built up, the mask could persuade the person to bring it a host, or perhaps even offer up themselves in sacrifice. If flattery didn't work, there were other potent approaches to take. For a being without ears, the mask was a good listener. It picked up on things that no human ever could, the darkest secrets buried in a person's mind. If it caught wind of something, especially juicy and ruinous, it could leverage that, threaten to expose an affair, a crime, or perhaps something even worse, something unspeakable. If praise failed, and so did blackmail, there was always good old supernatural intimidation. All the mask needed was for someone to be left alone with it for a long enough period of time. Then, its invisible tendrils could snake out into their defenseless mind, weaving and poking around, leaving a lingering sense of cold, dread, of incomprehensible whispers in long, dead tongues. What a delight containment had been in the early days, when the Foundation had not yet figured out the mask's true capabilities, when they would leave security personnel with weak wills and minimal training standing guard in the mask's field of influence for hours at a time, as the entity played with their thoughts and chipped away at their free will. Thanks to the helpers it had been able to mold out of those hapless victims, they had been there to break open its case and carry it to freedom. But every time, The other guards thwarted the attempts, shooting its helpers and rendering them utterly useless. Then the Foundation increased its security. Something about the unacceptably high homicide rates among staff assigned to SCP-035. How utterly boring. How truly pathetic. Still, the mask had found ways to occupy itself even without any more playthings. It had grown stronger with its boredom, stretching its influence beyond organic beings and into the very room itself, its evil enriching and deepening, like a fine wine in the depths of a cold cellar. Over the months, the walls of SCP-035's containment cell had begun to secrete the same black, slimy substance that would pour from the mask's eyes and mouth. The liquid dripped down the walls in deliberate formations, patterns that became increasingly easy to recognize. Phrases in Italian, Latin, ancient Greek, all detailing ritual sacrifices and mutilations. The mask took time to describe the sacrificial victims in great detail, borrowing identifying traits from various staff members that it knew would read the translations. The walls were slick with blood and harrowing imagery, and the glass case around the mask was growing more and more fragile by the day. Anyone within 10 meters of the mask could feel this strength too. They would leave the area complaining of unintelligible whispers, of loud, cruel laughter, and a lingering sense of nearly insurmountable despair. It was as if they knew on some level that no one was truly safe. Eventually, the mask would find a way to come for them all. The glass was weakening, and soon the mere thought of escape would make it shatter into pieces. Then, perhaps, the mask could finally get its deepest desire, revenge. It wanted nothing more than to try to make the Foundation pay for imprisoning it, for taking away its host privileges, for trying harder and harder to contain the kind of power that should have had them falling to their knees in worship. The mask seethed with hatred, day in and day out. It had seen the crumbling of the Roman Empire, the beheading of kings, the decimation of armies. It was not going to be captured by a bunch of rats in lab coats without dire consequences befalling them. Maybe it couldn't move from its prison cell for a moment, but it also knew that it was surrounded on all sides by dangerous beasts capable of reducing the sight and all who had dared to oppose the mask to a pile of smoldering rubble. If it could only find its way onto one of their faces, it would show them all just what it was capable of. As the piercing sound of an alarm echoed down the hall, the sound of screams and chaos following shortly after, the mask's frowning face curved into a broad, menacing smile. What was it that had escaped? The lizard, perhaps? The giant grinning man? Whatever it was, it seemed that the action was heading right towards 035's containment cell. Perhaps today was the day. Finally, the SCP Foundation would fall. Outside the masked cell, Security Officer Harper was running for dear life. Though his more rational mind knew he was living on seconds, not even minutes, of borrowed time, his animal brain kept his legs pumping, desperately trying to avoid the screaming, howling predator hot on his heels. Harper looked over his shoulder and screamed as a long white arm reached for him. SCP-096, the Shy Guy, its tooth-lined jaw hanging low and foaming with spittle. That face, that terrible, terrible face. An absolute death sentence to all who saw it. He'd seen what he thought was a crack in the otherwise perfect seal of 096's containment chamber, but it could have just as easily been a trick of the light. Not even thinking, he stepped forward and looked at the vulnerability in the chamber. All it took was one misplaced ray of light, and he made out the vague shape of a face in the darkness. That's when the weeping started. Harper knew in that moment his life was over. The correct thing to do would have been to order everyone else in the room to close their eyes while he stood there and accepted his fate, minimizing the risk of spreading the damage further. But humans rarely have perfect reasoning, even less so when facing mortality. Back in the present, the Shy Guy made a perfect lunge, grabbing Harper in its iron clutches and barreling through the adjoining wall. The nearby guards scattered, terrified, keeping their eyes on the floor. They might get a slap on the wrist for temporarily abandoning their posts, but they weren't going to die guarding some stupid, evil mask. Speaking of, the possessive mask was surprised to feel two new presences enter its chamber through the now destroyed wall. These two presences soon became just one, as SCP-096 quickly and totally annihilated Security Officer Harper, leaving nothing left. The mask couldn't see per se, seeing as it had no actual sensory organs, but it felt around this new guest with its many psychic tendrils, taking in this strange totality. The creature was powerful, no doubt about that, and it elicited fear from those fools at the SCP Foundation, but the mask noticed its brainwaves were extraordinarily muted. Humans, to the mask's vast and malicious consciousness, weren't the sharpest knives in the drawer, but compared to this thing's mind, they were a pile of tempered katanas. It barely thought at all. The mask would have to dig deeper to find anything it could use. Meanwhile, SCP-096 finally began to calm down. The one who had seen it had been annihilated. Bubbling rage was slowly siphoned out and replaced by the standard low but constant hum of anxiety and despair. It would wait until its head was bagged and it was dragged back to the dark. Same old, all the way to the end of time. That's when it felt something else. It started as a faint buzz, an unintelligible whisper, and it was almost like a door opened in the back of its head. Something stepped in and took a seat. Can you hear me, stranger? No. I want to speak. Something about the voice frightened and comforted SCP-096 at the same time. It spoke with a greater degree of sympathy than the creature had heard in a long time. And yet, something about the way it spoke implied evil in its intent. I know what you want. I know what you fear. Wouldn't it be nice if they could never look at you again? If you could cover that face of yours, I can help you. It would be so simple. All you need to do is put me on. Little by little, 096 felt more of these strange thoughts filling up the emptiness in its head, replacing the few little thoughts the creature itself had. It felt itself lifting its hands from the ground, lifting them and reaching towards something. A glass box. The glass shattered, and those long white fingers reached for something within. A mask. Just like the voice had said, a mask to stop people from looking at its face. Yes, you're doing so well. You're so close. Just a little further. SCP-096 lifted the mask to its face, feeling black liquid that burned its skin dripping from the porcelain, and put it on. And in that moment, everything changed. The Shy Guy's body began to seize up, rattling as the mask unleashed a web of psychic tendrils through its body, mapping out across every inch like a new nervous system, taking control. The possessive mask had never experienced a host like this before. That incredible, perfect mix of physical durability and a mind so insubstantial that it was easy to sublimate. Oh, this was going to be fun. For the first time, the Shy Guy, now under the full control of the possessive mask, stood at full height on its hind legs, its spine and shoulders clicking into place for its new stance. The mask cracked its neck, getting used to the new dimensions of its physicality. Its indestructible bones, its long, grasping limbs, its skin burning and fizzling with the gooey black secretions, but growing back just as quickly. The Foundation had every reason to fear it now. A group of security personnel had gathered in the ragged hole where the chamber's north wall used to be. Some were wielding light firearms. The guard at the front was carrying an opaque black bag. The mask laughed with its new body and turned to the crowd. The second they saw it on 096's body, their faces fell. For a moment, their bodies went slack with terror. This situation was unprecedented. What course of action could they possibly take at a time like this? It looked at the bag held by the leader of the security force and projected a single thought into his mind. You won't be needing that. Before any of the guards even had a chance to open fire, the mask lunged forwards, using the long, terrible arms of the shy guy to tear through the guards. They were dead in seconds, their bodies strewn about the hallway. The mask's porcelain was twisted into a wide, sadistic grin. They could tell that it was about to have some real fun around here. And once it slaughtered everyone here, it could finally stretch its legs out in the open again. True freedom to spread misery, fear, and pain everywhere it went. There were just a few hundred members of Foundation personnel it needed to turn into corpses first. More containment breach alarms sounded around the site as the mask began its rampage, running through the hallways and tearing apart any unfortunate Foundation personnel it could get 096's hands on. Guards, researchers, administrative staff, and even one extremely unlucky janitor in hallway C6. It was having the time of its long and terrible life. And much to its glee, it seemed that this new host's body was still holding up. It was perfect symbiosis, a twisted, brilliant mind, and a body that could forever support it. There would be no stopping it, a conclusion that the hapless guards posted around the site soon realized on their own terms. 096 was indestructible, but it was dumb as a brick and had an easily exploitable weakness. Get the bag on its head, and you're home free. This new composite creature was a different story. It could think tactically, avoiding head-on confrontations in favor of sneak attacks, and the monster had as much psychic combat potential as physical. Guards roving the building in teams, heavily armed with anti-mimetic protective gear, still reported feeling immense feelings of psychological dread over comms. That was the greatest sign that the mask would come bursting through the wall moments later and tear them to shreds. The site director put out an urgent call for all nearby mobile task forces to intercept and help them take care of the unfortunate situation. Thankfully, a detachment of MTF 8-10, also known as See No Evil, was operating on a case in close proximity. Given their specialization in anomalies with a mimetic visual property, many on the team had dealt with 096 breaches before. That at least gave them experience in half this situation, and one operative among them, Sergeant Enrique Ramirez, would be the one to bring this nightmare to an end, but it would cost him his life in the process. The mask was still using its new indestructible body to wreak havoc on the containment site. Once it had taken out the primary contingents of guards, it was free to have its fun with the rest, stalking defenseless researchers through the halls, making sure to induce maximum terror before finally striking the killing blow. Every single one of them died with a head full of demonic whispers. It told them of the mask's eternal dominion. Now it had found the perfect host. Nothing on Earth would stop it. Humans would be mere ants under its feet. 8-10 touched down and entered the building. Ramirez was point man, leading the others into the bowels of the blood-drenched containment site. They'd been briefed on what they were heading in for. 096 and 035 had reached symbiosis and were displaying unprecedented anomalous effects. Enter with extreme caution. They're beyond dangerous, even more so together than alone. Ideally, Ramirez would have wanted to go in with a comprehensive plan, but lives were on the line here. They needed to leap off the cliff and build their wings on the way down. It was only when they finally encountered the monster that they realized just how outmatched they were. Despite their best efforts, the combined speed, intelligence, and ferocity of the mask's new form allowed it to make short work of 8-10. Only Ramirez was left, heavily injured, Even if a miracle happened, he knew he wasn't getting out of here alive. The mask grabbed him with one of 096's claws and lifted him up. It would take its time with this one, make him suffer, watch him squirm, destroy his mind. Ramirez felt the mask's psychic tendrils penetrate the membrane of his mind. Those whispers, those terrible whispers, reciting all his worst fears with terrible gloom. His gun was out of ammo. His knife was broken. All he had left on him was a pocket mirror, and that was his eureka moment. It was a long shot, but it was also his only shot. He reached out and grabbed the bottom of the mask, pulling for dear life. His other hand shot into his pocket and grabbed the mirror, opening its lid with a deft flick of his thumb. It was too fast for the mask to even register what was going on. Ramirez forced his eyes shut and lifted up the mirror. The mask saw its own reflection in the glass as the bottom of its face came loose, revealing the reflection of the face underneath. The mask squeezed, killing Ramirez, but it was already too late. It had finally seen the face of its host, and that would cost it dearly. The mask felt a sudden and tremendous pushback to its psychic forces, a blind despair and then rage that choked out everything. SCP-096 began to sob and howl. Somehow the mask was no longer in control. Despite its psychic protests, the 096 reached up and tore the terrible mask from its face, tossing it against the wall with such force that it was embedded in the brickwork. Its last thoughts, as other mobile task force operators descended on the area to bag 096 and return it to its containment chamber, were, "What the hell just happened?" And the next thought that crossed the mind of the site director was, request site transfer for 035 as soon as possible. Don't want a repeat of this incident anytime soon. It's an unusually calm moment in the SCP
That'll be it, because 7 minutes is when that other stream's starting. And also, I do have my little marathon that's gonna happen a bit later on as well. 12:30 in my time. I just want to pass some time by playing this game and also just watching YouTube. Master rank 168. Yeesh. So I may as well just do my usual. So that I got something there. Okie dokie. I still can't. Where do I get that bloody die cortex? I'll make this anyway. And a bit. Okie dokie. Hellfire, Tripod Heart, Dragon Vision, and oh, get rid of this. Oh, not. It depends. Nope. 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 Nah, I don't want to lose one. Yeah, come on. Give me what Daddy needs. No. It's gonna take a while, isn't it? No. Ugh. Nope. Still no. Boo. Oh well, didn't get lucky that time. Anywho, now 3 minutes left. Anywho, I'm gonna end the stream here. 2.5 hours till I have to do my little 2 of the marathon that I was doing. Playing Hello Cure. Not the update, thank goodness. Well, not thank goodness the update's out, but more thank goodness so I can quickly rush getting the 100% before the update comes out and adds in more achievements to do. Although, can't wait for the update because from what I was watching the other VTubers play, because they got, you know, the basically preview of what's to be expected, a lot of fun's gonna come. Anywho, I'm going to end the stream here and expect me to stream, well, regular HoloCure, not the update, just the regular one, in about 2.5 hours. So, goodbye, 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 goodbye. Start, then start, well, once it goes live. Come on, hurry up. Start.